Hey photographers, are you ready to elevate your editing? Then I have really exciting news for you. Pack 6, which is Eric McVeigh's Part 2 preset pack by Goodlight Presets, is available now. If you've ever struggled to capture that effortless, nuanced aesthetic that the top editorial photographers are known for, then this pack is made just for you. Eric McVeigh's Part 2 presets will transform your editing process. You'll now be able to dial in those perfect skin tones that you've been wanting to achieve and nail down the tricky reception flash edits like a pro. What I absolutely love about Pack 6 is the commitment to color accuracy. The presets are incredibly mindful of keeping skin tones clean and true to life, never muddy or overexposed, which is what those high-end clients are wanting. This pack delivers the ability to give you that perfect balance of polished yet refined editorial look that you've been searching for. If you're ready to take your images to the next level, then head over to goodlightpresets.com and add them to your collection today. You'll be so happy you did.
Hey friends, and welcome to another episode of the Level Up Podcast. I'm your host, Taylor Petrinovich, joined as always by my co-host, Kelly Gilster.
Hey everyone, Taylor, how are you?
I am doing great. Spring is in the air and wedding season is upon us, which means I have all things business on my mind, which I feel like is an exciting time. I don't know about you, but I love the off season, but there's definitely an exciting kind of buzz that I feel heading into the wedding season, kind of in the late spring, early summer months.
Me too. I don't know about you, but I always feel like I need a slight little break. Like, even if it's just my backlog is, I have no backlog for, 2 weeks before the season hits or a month before the season hits. Like, there's always something so special about that time where you can just really sit down and strategically look at the year ahead and the season in front of you and plan for what your portfolio worthy events are going to be, how you want to execute on each of these events in maybe a slightly different way than you did the year before to keep things fresh, to keep your clients, excited about the imagery that you're producing and gain the eyes of maybe new creative partners that are noticing your work for the very first time.
Yes, I think that one thing that our audience definitely has a pulse on is how important wedding planners really are for our businesses. Not only is it just so much easier as a wedding photographer or a filmmaker to work on weddings where a wedding planner is involved, but oftentimes wedding planners are truly the gatekeepers to some of the highest paying and best clients out there. And that is true whether you are charging in that $6,000 to $8,000 range, that $8,000 to $12,000 range, or even more. Wedding planners often are the key to those amazing referrals. So today's guest is an amazing fit for this topic. We are talking to Lindsay Landman, who is a wedding planner based out of New York, and she is also just so knowledgeable. She has spoken at top industry events like Engage. Actually, when I was at Nemacolin back in 2024, she spoke on stage, on the main stage there, about gratuity, and she is just such a wealth of knowledge. I've had the pleasure of working with her one time before in Lake Tahoe for an incredible client, and so I'm excited to bring what Lindsay Landman has to the table as far as her insights into the industry and how her knowledge and experience can help our audience as wedding filmmakers and photographers get in with wedding planners heading into this 2025 season. So we know you guys are going to love this episode. This is the Level Up Podcast. I'm Taylor Petrinovich.
And I'm Kelly Gilster of 618 Studios.
And we are on a mission to help wedding filmmakers and photographers level up their businesses so you can make more and work less.
We want to help you confidently take your business from mainstream to luxury, and it all starts right here.
Well, Lindsay, thank you so much for joining on the podcast. We are really excited to chat with you.
I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. I would love for you to first introduce yourself to the listeners if they're not already familiar with you. Tell them a little bit about where you're based, about your business, all of those good things.
Absolutely. So my name is Lindsay Landman. My company is, shockingly, Lindsay Landman Events. I am based in New York City, but work all over the place. I've been in business more than 23 years. And we do a lot of weddings, but also a lot of other types of events as well. We work in the corporate, social, and nonprofit spheres almost equally at times. Sometimes the balance shifts, but at times pretty equally across all three. And we also do planning, design, and production. So in addition to our sort of core planning business, we also have a full-scale print and graphic design studio. We produce all of our own stationery and gifting for all of our events, as well as all of the floral and non-floral decor, and have a team of producers that make it all happen. So I do a lot of things in a lot of places, but and I love it.
That's
That's so cool.
amazing. And how many years have you been in business now?
23. Started in
Wow.
2001, which is like bonkers. So I guess like now it's 23 and change. But, I always say like I was an accidental entrepreneur. I just was sort of looking for my thing and thought this was something that I always enjoyed doing and was good at. The wedding industry was completely, I want to say, different / non-existent in terms of like a full united industry at that point. So I was truly and honestly just like making up my own job all those years ago. And I can't believe I've talked about weddings and parties every single minute of every day for this long.
23 years. Taylor and I say when we're talking about us as Level Up, we say we have 23 years of combined experience. So you
Well,
have
I
been
win.
in it 23 real years. Yes.
You definitely
yes.
win.
You win.
Yeah, I mean, it's truly hard to believe. It really is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that you approach business so differently than so many other wedding planners in the fact that you do so many things in-house and have different arms of your business. Can you talk a little bit about what inspired that or what kind of triggered you to grow in those different directions?
Absolutely. So a lot of it really came from just kind of how my brain works. Like I'm thinking about things really holistically all the time. So again, like when I started, this was a made up job. Like I wasn't modeling my business after other planners or other businesses that I saw. It was literally before, it was at the early days of the internet. So it was like long before social media, long before we were seeing what else was out there. So when I thought about an event, I was just thinking about it in all these ways and thinking about how one idea that I had, or like one sort of unified thought, carried through in all these pieces and parts. And I found at that time in the early 2000s, first of all, there was a mostly universal disdain for planners. It wasn't like, oh, good, you're going to make our job easier. It was like a little bit of this like push and pull where it's like, if you can serve us well, we like you. But if we feel like you're, not allowing us to do what we do, how we do it with our clients our way, then you're sort of like the enemy in the game. So, I found that particularly when it came to the design components, two things were happening. One was that I had been getting to know my clients and working with them and thinking through these like big picture ideas for their events from day one. And then we would sort of get to a florist's studio and they'd be like, okay, so like, what are we going to do here? And it was like, there was no sort of connection. There was no sort of organic experience. And then regardless of how we answered that question, they had their own agenda when it came to budget. They had their own agenda when it came to style. And it was like this sort of competing process. And it's changed tremendously now. Like, would I have these same thoughts in 2025? Definitely not. But in 2005, that's how it was. So that was sort of, from a budget standpoint, that was difficult. From a creative standpoint, that was difficult. But then the other piece was that because so few planners really thought about design as part of what their job was and how it worked, the takeaway from a beautiful event was like, oh, who did the flowers? And I was like, dude, the flowers are just like one piece of this much bigger puzzle. Like the design is so much more than that. That's just like one thing that got plopped on the table at the end. And I felt like there was no way for me to have meaningful ownership over the whole project unless it was like really, really in it. And so started in 2001 and 2007, I was like, I want it to be different. I want to feel like I'm doing it differently. And so I started to like dabble with like, what would it look like if I brought a little bit of flowers, and what would it look like if I had like a graphic designer freelance for me to like get this design kind of how I wanted it. It wasn't necessarily thought of as a business model as much as a tool to be a better planner. And then by 2009, I was kind of like doing all of that in-house and starting to build a team and figure out how to make it part of how I made money. That was a long journey. That was not an overnight journey. Like the flower business is completely different than the stationery business and the planning business. So I had a long way to go and a lot to learn.
Yeah, that's actually super interesting. I think that so many people think that they have to have everything figured out from the very beginning of how the end product is going to look, and the reality of business is that you go along doing something one way and then you hit a pain point and then that triggers you to change your approach. And so most of our listeners are photographers and filmmakers. And so I think that in the journey of a photographer or a filmmaker who's looking to grow their business, a pain point that we run into a lot of the time is we recognize that there's kind of this ceiling of clients' budgets that we can have access to all on our own. And the trigger is now we need to tap into wedding planners in order to kind of bridge that gap and seek out referrals from wedding planners. So it's like their pain point and their trigger leading to the wedding planner, like introducing that concept into their business. And I think so many people are so intimidated by wedding planners, and they don't really need to be. I would love to hear a little bit about your thoughts on like maybe mistakes you're seeing from wedding photographers or filmmakers who are just starting to introduce the concept of maybe trying to work with planners in those like baby phases.
That's such a good question. It's funny. I was like literally I'm having a conversation with a stationer tomorrow who is newer in the game and, wanted to sort of understand how to connect with planners. So I was like thinking ahead as to what that like number one pain point is. And I think for me, the number one mistake that I see that I'm always like, oh, you're not ready for me, is when any vendor, but certainly a photo and video, I think are huge pieces because that is its own art. And I find sometimes the artist doesn't have a very good understanding of his or her own, like the place that his art fits in the marketplace. So like when a photographer comes to me with, I really want to work with you. I love what you do. I really, pick me, pick me, pick me. And then I look at the work and it looks nothing like any of the work that I show. To me, it's like missing this connection of the photographer understanding his own work enough to be able to see how it connects to someone else's work, if that makes any sense. Mm-hmm. So it's like when I was thinking about it in the context of this stationer, it's like what she does is like very like vintagey, sweet, like lots of, like deckled edges and flower petals. And like, it's just not my aesthetic. It's just not what I do. Yeah. And so, it's the idea that that person feels that it's likely to win me over. It sort of shows like a weakness in the thought process, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a lack of alignment. I think that there's such an art in being able to like recognize alignment, like alignment with our own ideal clients and our work, alignment of who we can associate our business with in the industry. Because I think so many people think that all luxury clients are the same, all wedding planners are the same, and they fail to recognize that we all have our own individual character stamps and little sub niches, and we rarely kind of venture outside of those things unless the client really wants us to, I guess. So yeah, I think the art of recognizing where you are aligned is something that is a muscle that a lot of people need to kind of work on for sure.
And I think the next step of that, like, yes, 100%. And it's sort of like know thyself in a lot of ways so that you know who you are aligned with. But the next step is like, the planner holds a tremendous amount of responsibility for the event. And I feel sometimes with the industry as a whole, like that role that we carry is somewhat diminished in the process. Like it is a big weight to carry to be, at the end of the day, like every vendor comes to the event through our recommendation. Anything that that person does or does not do, like yes, each of us holds our own responsibility, but at the end of the day, like the planner holds all that responsibility. We're managing tremendously large amounts of money that people take very seriously. And so I almost feel like there needs to be like a reverence for what our role is with the client in that position, because it's a big deal. Like that's like a tremendous amount of liability comes with that. I mean, not just legally, but emotionally. And so when we have, a photographer or filmmaker who is like, let's say the art is aligned, but they don't necessarily have the experience working with this type of client or at this type of venue or travel or whatever the sort of piece is, it's like, again, like know thyself. You have to acknowledge that, and you have to acknowledge the leap and be willing to truly build a partnership. Like if that planner is going to take the chance on you, you kind of have to be ready to partner and be nurtured through the process. Because as you both know, it's never as easy as it looks. It's not like, ooh, yay, I'm just going to like be on a mountaintop in Wyoming and it's going to be, sunshine and rainbows. Like it might be, but it might not be.
Definitely like the romanticized version that we see on Instagram after all is said and done. And then there's the real boots on the ground, like sweating in the middle of July, hauling everything across the property, all of those things. Actually, I'm going to just take this opportunity really quick to plug our course, The Luxury Framework. Kelly and I created this incredible resource for filmmakers and photographers who are looking to scale into the luxury market, and especially ones who want to start working with wedding planners. We teach all about the ins and outs of the wedding industry, workflows, processes, and all of those things that perfectly do align with the luxury market. Because I think something a lot of people fail to realize is how different at a granular level the mainstream market is than the luxury market. And if you show up and you're unprepared to execute the day in a luxury way, then you will kind of lose out on an amazing opportunity to leverage those relationships in real time for the future. So you can find that at thelevelupco.com/the luxury framework. Sorry, Lindsay, I couldn't pass the opportunity by.
I love it. It's awesome. And it's such an important thing because there's so many aspects to it.
Absolutely. So now we're sitting here in 2025. Many people have not yet started their wedding season, and maybe they want to approach this season in a completely new way. They want to start, working alongside wedding planners a little bit more. They've found that they've reached a plateau in their business. What are maybe 3 ways that they can get their ducks in a row in order to start to like kind of speak that language where wedding planners are going to see that, they're working on that. They're bridging the gap. They're getting ready to like work alongside wedding planners.
Amazing. Okay, I'll try for 3. The first that comes to my mind is really just sort of taking stock of, who you are and what you're going to show, as well as who you're going to show it to. One size does not fit all. I don't, I'm based in New York City. About 50 to 60% of our work is here. And if anyone's ever been to a wedding in New York City, 99% of the time they're inside. It's dark. It's enclosed. We have good weather for 5 minutes of the year. Like you're not getting those like glorious, Northern California sunshine moments where everyone's frolicking through a vineyard. We don't have that here. So like, you need to kind of really be prepared to look at like what kind of work the planner is doing, and not just the artistry of it, but the logistics of it and how that aligns, and really think that through and find planners who are aligned with where you are, as well as planners who are aligned with where you want to go. Because I think that's 2 different things. And so I think that's number 1. Number 2 is I cannot emphasize how important it is to me or to most planners I know that your paperwork is buttoned up. Like I literally will not hire someone who can't get through a 1-page document without typos. Like I just won't do it, because if you have your own documentation that doesn't look great, makes sense, that it's super clear, and that I know that you've taken the time to like really think through the details and had someone else check you. You don't have to be a good speller. You don't have to be good at grammar, but somebody in your world should be. So like that to me is like red flag number 1. Like if you don't understand the level of care that's required to work with the kind of clients that I have, you're out. And that goes for your emails too. So like all that written communication, so like just really, really take the downtime to focus on it. I don't know how important it is to people, like written proposals and stuff. Like I'm always kind of on the fence of like, does that even matter in this day and age when everyone's just sort of scrolling through Instagram? I don't know. But it matters to me that if you're going to send me something, it looks awesome and it reads really well. And then I think Something that perhaps gets missed with all, vendors and partners who haven't yet been sort of like in the planner zone is understanding and sort of thinking about how the client relationship shifts when clients are working directly with their own photographers and filmmakers versus when you're working through a planner. So the planner's job, a good planner's job, should not be to box out the client. It should not be to separate this relationship, but it should be alleviating all of the work that goes with it. And I know it may not feel like work for, when a filmmaker sends a questionnaire about music and things like that shouldn't feel like work, but it is still work. And it's a lot of what we get paid to do is to kind of soften those moments. And so understanding what the planner's sort of position is and role is between the client communication and the vendor communication, and what is the best way to sort of create client connection, but not give them the kind of stuff to do that they don't want to do, which is why they have a planner. If that makes any sense.
Oh, totally. And then you are working so, you and that client you get to know each other so well throughout the wedding planning process. So like you also know if the client is going to be concerned about something like that. Like you might be like, oh, absolutely. I'm sure that the client wants to have a hand in this part of the process. Like I just know they are like that type A that like wants to be in that. But then I'm sure you have other clients where you're like, this client is not going to care. They just want to choose you as the expert to like make those song selections. And so it's really not like this one size fits all process anymore. I feel like that's like a big thing that like photographers and filmmakers kind of need to recognize when they're bridging that gap. And then just understanding that like for those listening, planners are not the enemy. I think that there's lots of chatter in Facebook groups about like the planner's trying to take the clients away from me and like I speak directly to my client and like, no, it's really like it's a partnership. It's not that they're trying to like pull things away. It's like you said, Lindsay, like the clients hired you to alleviate things from them and take care of parts of the process that they didn't want to take part in. That's why they hired a planner,
Totally. I always think about it. If you ever, God forbid, have been like in a hospital or in any sort of extensive medical care, every time there's like a shift change, like new nurses come in, they make you say your name, your birthday, what is your ailment? Like my mom just had a knee replacement. Like every time they're like, which knee did you have operated on? She's like, my left, still my left, And so I feel like what sometimes vendors fail to understand is that every time a client has a new interaction with a vendor, it's like, what's your name? What's your wedding date? How many people? Where's it going to be? Those questions, It's the same as the shift change. And a lot of what a planner does is like, we own that information. And so we will get the shift change done with the vendor. And that allows the client to come in at a totally different place where the vendor should have, no matter where you are in the field, like they should already have done the work. Like if I already told the photographer, okay, they're getting married at this venue, this many people, it's a challenge because we haven't figured out yet if the ceremony is going to be here or there, or, the parents are divorced, or like whatever the dynamics are, right?
Yeah.
I've already done that. And so it's now the onus is on that photographer to process that information, think about it, be like, okay, I don't know that venue. Let me look into it, or let me think about where is there a light consideration we want to think about for where the ceremony should be? And that's me. I can contribute to this conversation so that they come in like how the doctor swoops in after the nurse has done all the work. The doctor swoops in, like already knows all the stuff and can actually diagnose the problem. And so, that is a lot of what we do, and that should benefit everybody. Because the client doesn't want to like reiterate the stuff again and again and again. And the idea that any vendor thinks that they have to start from ground zero in order to build the relationship is just like a misguided thought process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that you said that, the misguided thought process. So good.
We've been having a lot of conversations with both filmmakers and photographers in the wedding industry, and we have been seeing an overwhelming number of people say that they are either frustrated by the lack of inquiries landing in their inbox or with the quality of inquiries that are coming in too. Leads that maybe just feel a little bit lower than where they are in the market, with low budgets, and with weddings that they're not excited about booking. If you can relate to either one of these and you really want to break into into that next level of the market and start attracting your dream clients without chasing them, then we have a new training that we would love to invite you to called the Luxury Wedding Playbook. If you're ready to position yourself in the premium or luxury market with a brand that feels magnetic to high-end clients, but your inbox isn't full of dream clients quite yet, and your brand isn't resonating with your ideal clients or wedding planners, this is because it's about having more than just beautiful work. It's about turning your brand into a client-attracting machine that brings you referrals from wedding planners and fills your calendar with high-end events again and again. And inside this training, we'll teach you exactly how to position your brand to get in front of the right clients and fill your inbox with dream inquiries in just 1 hour of work per week. We hope to see you inside this new training. You can find it at thelevelupco.com/playbook, and we'll see you inside. Well, I think that what happens is a lot of people, when they're getting into their business in those early first year, second year, third year, they are seeking out education and they're looking in places where it's offering very beginner friendly education where there is no planner. And I think people get so, stuck in their ways as they grow and they don't realize that they need to become flexible. They probably don't even recognize it's a problem if we're being totally honest. And so they just do things the way they've always done it since day one. And it's kind of bad habits. We actually just had an episode a few weeks ago about like bad business habits and treating your business like a hobby instead of a business. So go check that one out if you haven't yet already. But we kind of talked about that is like, you start doing things one way because it's working for you and you're not recognizing when it's actually time to shift. And that's something we walk our students through constantly is like, we're saying them over and over, like we're going to be doing a lot of undoing first before we move forward and recognizing what needs to be undone from your processes, whether that's like the honeybook brochures and like moving in a direction that's more friendly to the luxury client or what have you. There's so many things that really do need to change as you scale your business.
Absolutely. And I think there's a story to be told too. Like when we're looking particularly at photo and video, like I feel like this is an area that I spend a lot of time in. I take pretty seriously and I have very specific sort of criteria and needs in these areas. And, they're not always, first of all, like about the trends of the moment. Like sometimes, like I'm struggling right now with this like return to messy film of the moment looks. Like that's not my aesthetic. And so I want to find the place for myself where I can honor what my clients want, who want to be in the moment, but also honor my own more sort of timeless approach to timeless to me, like not timeless to somebody else, but like I am a creative in this business too. So I have to come in with my own point of view and be loyal to it. So anyway, so as I'm like sort of digging through portfolios, like I can see where the shifts happen. I think a experienced and seasoned planner can see where the business shifts happen, particularly in an artist, right? So if I'm looking at photo portfolio, I can see the kind of events you're shooting. Like I can see that you took a beautiful picture of this table and it's amazing, but there was no decor on this table. There's no such thing as even a mid-market wedding with no decor on the table. That was a budget wedding. I can see it. You can't fool me. That's okay. Yeah. I don't need to be fooled, right? I can see that you still took a beautiful picture of something that wasn't actually beautiful, and that's a win. But those shifts to someone who knows better, and it's not the client, it's the planners, because the client's just like, oh my God, romance and love, and yeah, I love it, and I love red, and everything's red. Like they're looking for something totally different. That's such an emotional thing, whereas I'm looking at it in a very sort of analytical way. So like I can see where we go from nothing on the table to the bud vases and candles on the table to the low centerpieces, to the high centerpieces, to the ceiling treatments, to the band installations. Like that's how it goes, right? That's how decor money gets spent. You have a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. Now I have something, I have a custom dance floor and I have a band installation and I've had something hanging from the ceiling and there's an entrance and my escort table. Like it's the and. So you guys are the ones telling those stories and capturing that. And so you can't forget that we see those moments of shift in your work and thinking about how you want to acknowledge it and how you want to honor it. Because pretending it isn't there is not helpful to me. I can only speak for myself.
Yeah. Don't be an ostrich, like shoving your head in the dirt or whatever about it. Like if you hide, it doesn't exist. Yeah. No, I think that's so smart. So, Kelly and I actually have a new training that we just launched last week, actually. It is called the Luxury Wedding Playbook, and it's for photographers and filmmakers who need a little help in the brand alignment department, specifically on how to utilize their content, whether that's photo content or video content, to leverage things in different ways that they probably never have before to appease to higher end clients, the highest paying clients you've probably ever captured, or wedding planners. And so if you want to grab your seat inside, you can go to thelevelupco.com/playbook. Again, it's an hour-long training that I think is going to really open your eyes to how to leverage exactly what we're talking about here in this conversation with Lindsay. So yeah, I feel like so many people underestimate the importance of what the content is of. Like your skills can be so amazing, the lighting can be perfect, like the way you edit can be, mind blowing, but sometimes it's actually what you're capturing that matters a little bit more than people realize.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And also, like leveraging, I talked about this in the intro, like sitting down before your season starts and pinpointing like who the creative team is on all of these. You can kind of see which ones are probably going to be your front runners for your portfolio worthy events, and then setting yourself up in that way to like stack your team accordingly. Make sure you have the best second shooter secured for that. Maybe you want to bring on an additional aerial like drone operator for that, because you can just see that like this one isn't like the rest. I think that's a thing that's very common misconception in the mainstream market, is that all the weddings are viewed on the same playing field. And then you kind of fail to see when you kind of get that breakaway wedding that can really change the trajectory of your business and how to leverage that. And so we talk a lot about that inside of our brand new training, The Wedding Playbook.
Okay, I think that's something a lot of people should pay a little bit closer attention to is other creatives in the industry. Something that photographers and filmmakers, I think, get wrong is we pay too much attention to what other photographers and filmmakers think over and over and over again, and we fail to listen to others in the industry, like you, Lindsay. And one thing I love about you specifically is I feel like you're kind of known for your hot takes, and you're not afraid to share strong opinions, which sometimes I might agree with them. Sometimes I might disagree. More than likely, I'm agreeing though. But a few years ago, you did a story series on Instagram. If you're not already following Lindsay on Instagram, go give her a follow. We'll link her handle in the show notes below. But you did this series called Winning Me Over back in 2023, and I screenshotted it all and I dragged them back out of my archives. So I just want to kind of like read them, and I might have Cassie, our editor, plop them on the screen so you guys can read along with us. But Winning Me Over by Lindsay Landman. Are you ready to go back 2 years?
I'm a little scared because like I kind of remember, but okay, go on. I'm ready.
Okay. So you said, when I ask you what it costs, ... do not ask me what my budget is. You set your price, not me, not my client. What they have to spend and what you charge are 100% unrelated. I think that was a great hot take.
That's my number one thing. Like nothing makes me crazier than when someone says to me, what's your budget or what's your client's budget? Like, what's the difference? You decide what your time is worth, about your experience, your skill, your travel, your team. Like, I don't know the answers to those questions, and it shouldn't change based on my client's budget. I believe it to my core. I believe it for every single business overall. Like, you don't go into a store and they tell you like, you say, oh, there's no price tag on this sweater. What does it cost? They're like, oh, what do you have to spend? It doesn't matter what I have to spend. It only matters what the sweater costs. So this drives me bananas. And I think that particularly where a lot of vendors go wrong, I mean, I won't go too deep, is that clients who aren't working with planners actually truly do not know what they have to spend on things. Like, they might make a budget. It's completely made up numbers. I mean, I talk to people all the time who tell me my budget is $400,000. Fine. And then I'm like, okay, well, what do you want? And we go through it. And I was like, well, what you describe is going to cost $850,000. And they're like, oh, okay. Like, what do you mean? Oh, okay. Like, that's more than double the money. And it, like, that 400 was just a number that they pulled out that they thought, oh, that sounds like a big fat number. And it's like, it is a big fat number for something, but not what you described. I need a different big fat number. And so nobody knows the answer except for the person themselves. Oh, I could go. That could be my whole own podcast. Go on.
I have one little maybe like 5% degree of disagreement.
Great.
That didn't make sense at all. I feel like an exception to that rule could be, let's say we already have a relationship, Lindsay. Like we worked together before. You come to me and I'm like, my price is $30,000. And then, but I'm like, I really want to work with you again. So I'm like, but I can be flexible
That's
where
great.
needed because I
love
want
that.
to work with you dependent on the client's budget. Then I feel like it's like a little bit
It's
gray
not
area.
like this is my price, that's the end of the conversation. It's just when the beginning of the conversation where like the onus shifts to the client, I feel like that's a really difficult place, particularly if they're not working with a planner. But a lot of times, like we will have a very awesome wedding, a big budget, a lot of special things. And for whatever reason, they either don't want to invest in Filmmaker, or we ran out of money. We had to increase the tent flooring or the weather, I don't know, whatever, something else. So I had to pull money from somewhere. And I could come to you and say, listen, this is such a good fit. I know normally you're probably charging more. I have $18,500. Is this a conversation you want to have? Great. That's like, I think, it's not to say that I change my price all the time for people, all the time.
Yeah. So the leading question should not be, what's the budget?
Correct.
There we go. Okay. Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. And honestly, like I do get the ick a little bit when I see people asking that first, and I'm imagining myself being in the client's position of feeling like it's just going to like, what if my budget's bigger than what you normally charge? Are you just gonna like charge me more just cause? So I'm wondering if that's a hesitation.
It is a huge hesitation. I mean, I feel the hesitation too. I will say, like, hot take, frustration that I have is I think the perception of our clients and the people that I serve is that everyone just has an endless supply of money. And like, yes, our clientele is all in the ultra luxury space. That's what we specialize in. Our people are spending a lot of money. However, a budget is a budget is a budget. Like, I'm given a certain amount of money. It's my job to spend it responsibly over many, many, many categories. And so the coming into it with the perception that, that you could potentially take advantage of money is a fear that we have. And we've had experiences. I mean, we had a terrible experience maybe about 1.5 years ago where one of our brides before hiring us had reached out to a photographer and got a quote just casually, didn't really do anything with the information. She wasn't ready, and then mentioned it to us, but didn't mention that she got a price. We reached out to the photographer. We were literally quoted double.
Wow.
It happens. Like, the perception of what our role is in the picture, can influence, how the process goes. And, if we can't provide value to our clients, we really aren't worth our weight in salt. So, all of this matters. But I think that's why, I also feel pricing is so inextricably tied to our brands and to who we are, so owning your price, understanding why you charge it, and being able to communicate that is such a huge part of how the connection gets made. And so when you can't really own that and you can't have that conversation, to me, that's just also a red flag across the board.
Yeah. Yeah. You shouldn't be just throwing numbers out like the client approaching the 400,000. Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right. There's a bunch of slides. So I'm just going to do one more. So if you guys want to see Lindsay's hot takes in the future, you need to go follow her and look out for her stories. Okay, this other one is, tell me where you're based. Stop with the worldwide nonsense. Tell me where you live, where you lay your head at night, and where you get your electric bill. You aren't tricking anyone by hiding your whereabouts, but you are deterring me from contacting you if I'm looking for a vendor in a specific location. If I like your work enough, I'll ask you to travel where I need you to go.
Yes.
Still stand by it. I still stand 2 years later. Yeah.
I stand by that wholeheartedly. I think that, the internet's a tricky place, and there's a lot of smoke and mirrors. And I think, again, for discerning planners who are looking to take our work seriously and be able to represent our clients' needs very seriously, we just need all the information. Like, if I'm doing a wedding, we're working on a wedding now in New York, we have a ton of talent here. We have everyone you ever need. But I am hiring a photographer, and we only looked at photographers who are not from New York to service this particular wedding. it's not because of where they were. It's not that I couldn't find someone here. It was because it didn't matter where they were, because I was looking for a specific type of artistry and a specific type of personality to match with the client. So like, that's what our job is. That's what we need to do. But if I don't have all the information, I can't do it. And I don't like not having the details. And I think people think that elevates you to be like, oh, I'm like a traveling bandit. And it's like, it doesn't really.
Your portfolio will show that. Like,
totally.
Yeah, you can say you're based in St. Louis and have work from Cabo and Europe and New York City, and it's very clear that you do destination
That you are
work.
the traveling bandit. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
I mean, this, I think, goes back to sort of the core of all of this, which is that the answer to leveling up, at least how I see it, is not in marketing, it's in the work. Like, you can do the work and then you can market it, but you can't skip the work and just go to the marketing because, we want to find the best talent and the best match at different price points in different places in the country. Like, there is no one answer. Sometimes I'm looking for the most talented photographer in St. Louis because I know that he or she charges less than the most talented photographer in Washington, D.C. And I will be willing to spend the money to fly you where you need to go because that's what I need. And I am looking for a certain kind of value or a certain kind of aesthetic. Like, that's, I think, what gets missed about what planners do. Like, we have to be strategic. I'm still giving, people think it's insane. I'm giving $5 million to do a party. That is insane. But guess what? Still $5 million runs out. Like, at some point, I finish it and now I don't have any more. So it's my job. If you give me 5, I can spend 6, So it's my job to be strategic in all the ways. And I think that's what the more experienced planners who are working in the ultra luxury space are really doing in a way. Our job is much more businessy, I think, than is sometimes appreciated. And all of these things, all of my hot takes play into it because there's a tremendous amount of thought that we put into what we do and how we do it. And having others who want to work with us sort of like understand that and be part of our process is really how success happens.
Yeah, that's great. This has been so great. I'm sure the listeners are just like eating up all of these like bits of knowledge and hot takes and everything, because it's just so important to have these conversations so that everybody can thrive, right? So that they can really do some looking inward into seeing, hey, I want to get to this next level. Now here's how I can execute on that.
Definitely. I'm so glad you guys do this. And there are so many talented photographers and filmmakers, especially. I mean, so many. And I know the competition is fierce. So I appreciate how everyone is just sort of looking for their way to be seen. It's really, really, really hard. So I think, all the tools are so valuable.
Yes. Well, Lindsay, thank you so much for your time and all of your expertise. It's very apparent that you have 23 years of experience underneath your belt. For those who are listening and they want to have a chance to find you, where can they find you online?
Well, my website is lindsaylandmanevents.com, and you can always find me on Instagram at Lindsay Landman. And I took a mild Instagram hiatus after a long stretch of being on it. So I'm coming back and I'm ready for more.
Yes, your 365 days of things I know about weddings. I can't believe it's over.
I can't believe it either.
Different era.
It's true. It's true. But I'm coming back. So I hope to see everyone there. And I love to look at new work online. So bring it.
Thank you for joining us in today's conversation. Please help us reach more filmmakers and photographers like you by taking a screenshot and sharing it to social media. And don't forget to tag us at The Level Up Co.
And join us again next week, same time, same place, as we continue to level up the industry together.